Hey everyone, and welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. Today we're diving into something really special. My guest is a former book publisher, but a current producer, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. She's a true supporter of all things art, and that is very clearly evidenced with her upcoming reality show titled The Gift, in which she awards one artist a $100,000 unrestricted grant to bring their work to life. But before she does that, you get to meet a lot of really great artists from very different mediums on the show. So everyone say hello to Therese Tag Goulet. Welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. I really like being here.
Well, you haven't started yet. So,
Well,
you may change your mind in a minute. Don't jinx us.
it's okay. I was actually thinking, yeah, I like being here. This is my living room that I'm in right
Fair.
now.
Yeah, I do try
I
to make
like,
it easy on everybody. I don't like have a studio. I thought about it when I first started. I was like, I would maybe in bigger success try to make people come into a studio, but then I was like, why? I don't necessarily want to go into a studio.
oh,
So,
yeah. And since 2020, you can talk to people all over the world. I mean, you wouldn't be
yeah.
able to interview people from
Right. Well,
Zimbabwe
that's
or wherever.
yeah,
Yeah,
even now, like when I'm booking people, sometimes I'm working around time zones. I'm like, that's fine, that's easy. I don't mind doing that. So I'd rather have
yeah.
an opportunity to get someone. So I want to start with you. I want to introduce you to my audience through the lens of pop culture, because a lot of what you've done, I think art is pop culture, but I feel like a lot of
Mhm.
what you've worked with is maybe higher art in a lot of ways than some people think about the things that we typically discuss on this
Okay.
podcast. So I want to talk first about your love of things, all things art and pop culture, where it first started, and if there was kind of like something when you were younger that made you say, I want to be the creative versus I want to help the creatives, what that inciting incident, as it were, may
Yeah.
have been.
I think like most creatives, it started in childhood. And so for me, my first love was books and reading. And I think that came about because I was kind of a nerdy kid. I wasn't great at sports. You know, when I ended up on a sports team, it'd be like purely by accident, like you just needed an extra player or something. And so I spent a lot of time indoors. Friends used to call me Casper the Friendly Ghost because I didn't tan, which, and I'm an indigenous person, which is, yeah, that's one thing I don't love about myself is I don't tan.
But it's probably better for
Anyway,
you because I'll be honest, I sit in the sun a lot and I never used to wear sunscreen and now I've got melanoma spots. So
oh
you were
no,
probably
yeah,
doing it right, like
yeah,
genetically you're good, but also being inside and being safe is probably smart. I probably should have
oh
done things a little
no.
differently.
No, I think it's kind of like darned if you do, darned if you don't.
Mm.
I can't believe I just said that. But I have multiple sclerosis, which first manifested when I was in my 30s, and there's a higher incidence of it in northern climates, and especially from children who did not go outside. As
Wow.
yeah, so because vitamin D is a really effective way to deal with it. It's one of the things like I go to a clinic here,
Mhm.
and they recommend that all of us be taking vitamin D. And yeah, so I guess whatever we do in our childhood, we have no idea how that's going to manifest later in life. I'm really blessed though now that I'm much older. I've lived with it successfully, so
Mm.
all good. But let's bring us back
Yes,
to
yes.
yeah,
You were talking about,
books,
being
books.
inside.
Yes. So I read constantly. I read everything that I could get my hands on, and my parents were really good about giving me things to read. And I think we're going to talk about one of those
Hmm.
books here today. Where sort of my love of creating came from was I wanted to be able to make what I loved, which was my parents would, for example, I remember on birthday or Mother's Day or Father's Day, I would write these stories and illustrate them, and so I actually have some still. I probably should have brought them. I probably should have should have got rid of them long ago. But
Were you
yeah,
doing that all on your own, or was that like a
yeah. I was as a
okay?
child. I was like multi-page, multi-page newsletters. I guess they'd be about family life as seen
Nice.
through the eyes of an 8-year-old. So it's really corny jokes, and yeah, it was. I one of the things I really appreciate about my mother in particular, I remember her saying, "You can do anything you want to do." Now, as an older person, I actually read this book by it's called "Do It, Let's Get Off Our Butts." This was decades ago, and it's a lovely author whose name is not coming to me right at the moment. But one of the things he said is, we can do what we want in life. We just can't do everything. So we can do anything, but not everything. So
Mm.
when we're kids, we don't realize all the things, whether or not we're capable of doing them yet. But so I guess I've mostly forged ahead in life. Just, oh, I'm going to do this. It looks fun, like making a TV show. But we'll
Yeah.
get to
What,
that
yeah, I
later
was gonna
too.
say it looks fun. It's a ton of words. Also, I did just Google this book as you were talking. I found Do It, Let's Get Off Our Butts, A Guide to Living Your Dreams by John
Peter,
Roger and Peter McWilliams. Yeah. So if
yeah, Peter
everybody wants
McWilliams
to
is
go
the one I
check
was in
that
touch
out,
with. Yes,
yes.
yeah.
So yes, you did already kind of tease the fact that the past pop culture influence you picked to talk about more in depth is a book. It's a child's picture book, which I really loved because I've been trying to sell one forever, and it's impossible these days. It feels like to do it
Yeah.
without having the illustrations. But this one feels like, in a lot of ways, it's setting up a story that we see a lot, or I see a lot in television. I want you to talk a little bit about this book, Mr. Pine's Purple House.
Mhm.
Where did you first find it? Was this like a situation where it was like someone gave it to you, or tell us how you first came across it, and what it was that kind of drew you in the beginning?
I think it was given to me because my sister Lolly, who we call Dr. Lolly, also loves this book. Um, Initially, I didn't recall exactly how it came to me, but it just resonated with me because Mr. Pine's Purple House was about this person who does things differently, and not just does things differently, but he encourages his neighbors to do things differently too. He lives in this neighborhood where everyone has exactly the same white house on this long street. They all look identical. He decides, well, how am I going to find my house? He plants a tree. All of his neighbors plant a tree. He plants a bush. All of his neighbors plant a bush. And eventually he says, okay, I'm going to paint my house. Goes to the paint store and he gets himself purple paint. And I love the purple you're wearing, by the way.
Oh, that was not even intentional, but yeah.
That's like it's an homage to Mr. Pine and
Hmm.
his purple house. So he paints his house, and his neighbors gather around. They say, "Oh, we love your house." And he said, "Okay, but this time, don't copy me. What colors do you love?" And they each pick different colors, and they end up in this neighborhood where it just sounds really joyful, and it sounds like people are doing things that give them pleasure and not following the crowd. And I think that was really inspirational even as a child. So it definitely has been something that has helped me as an adult too.
Yeah. And honestly, that is what I meant when I was like, I feel like this is a story that we see. We don't see it in this exact way, but the idea of like learn to stand out. Like, why would
Yeah.
you want to just be the same? When you first said that you wanted to talk about this book, I read kind of a little summary of it, and I was like, oh, the first thing I thought of was like the opening to Weeds, where it's like those ticky-tacky houses, everything's the
Oh
same. Like,
yeah.
I live in an HOA community,
Such a
so it's
great
also
song.
top of my mind all the time of like what you can't do. You have to be
Yes.
homogenous, and I hate that.
I
So
know.
so glad when I got a chance to actually like see this book. I was like, oh, this is smart. You know, you're introducing this to children at a very young age. And I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of books that do it in different ways. But what I
Yeah.
really liked about this one was playing with the color, because I think that's something that, like, this is about a house, but I feel like as kids, and I will speak for myself, especially as a young woman, as a girl, like playing with your wardrobe too, right? Like it was so important. I didn't go to a school where we had to wear a uniform. So it was so important to me and my friends, like, how are we representing ourselves in what we wore. And for me, I was like, I want to be comfortable, but like I also, don't want to be in the same thing everyone else is wearing. I don't want to be in the same
Right.
colors all the time. And it felt like this is an interesting book that kind of inspires kids to think outside that box in not like
Right.
not always literal about a house, right? Like kids can't
Yeah.
control their house, but they can control other things.
Exactly. And I like how they market it now. They say it's helped generations of free thinkers, and it uh, it is probably more timely than ever. So
Mm.
I'm glad I get a chance to talk a little bit about it. And I appreciate your podcast because I the last one I watched, I believe it was a fellow who was inspired by an Aretha Franklin song,
Oh yes, Chris. Yeah.
and you encompass all sorts of different media and popular
Hmm.
culture. And it seems like different people can take inspiration from just about anything that's created, which is like, as a creator, then it says to us, sometimes we affect people in ways we don't even
Yeah.
realize. Like the ripple effect that we have from the things that we write or draw or record or make can
Yeah.
reach people and affect them in ways, yeah, that are incredible.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the one rule I have for people is just pick whatever, you want, but if it's something someone else already has picked, you have to like make a really strong case for like why you have something different to say, only
Yeah,
because it's really easy, for people of the same generation to gravitate towards the same exact thing.
right,
And it's like, well, if your stories are too similar, then it's not as interesting. I want people to get to know the guest through these
right.
stories. So, if all your stories are like, I was inspired to go into writing because of this one thing, and I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometimes I do overthink it. I will say that. But that's also why I am trying to actively talk about more books because I do think we come to them at different ways, different ages. Even sometimes we'll read things that are not quote unquote meant for the for us in terms of the age group we are
right.
when we read them. And certainly a children's book doesn't have to just be read to an actual small child. I feel like everybody I knew was getting like that Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go book at graduation. That was not
Right.
necessarily written for you at 18, but so I love that this was brought up. I'm curious if once older in life, once you did kind of say, hey, I do want to be creative, I do want to go into the arts in this way, if having this as an early inspiration did lend itself in any way to you in terms of the kind of out of the box stuff you wanted to work on or just the types of people you wanted to work with and say like this project can't be like this project because I just did that version. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like just in the sense of doing something different every time.
right. Well, I think one of the ways it inspired me was as I've gone through life, I've, again, like many creatives, tried to knock on certain doors and tried to get things achieved through the normal channels.
Mm.
And that one way that happened for me was as an author. I was looking for traditional publishing deals. I got essays published in various places. Like I placed in a Writer's Digest competition, and then I managed to get in a book called Chocolate for a Mother's Heart, I think it was. It was similar to those Chicken Soup for the Soul
Hmm.
books. It came from, I think it was Fireside Press, like a division of Random House. I've been in like division books from divisions of Penguin and Simon and Schuster and all the big ones
Right.
with essays, but I wasn't getting my own complete book sold and out there in the world. And one of the things that came to me in the late 90s as the internet was coming aboard was, you know, I saw there's this thing called ebooks.
Mm.
I had bought an ebook online back when maybe the majority of the world still wasn't even online. And I was teaching seminars at the time. I used to be a motivational speaker as well. So I would go to different cities and I teach different things. And I remember putting up this notice for an event that I was holding in my own city. Pardon me. And I remember getting emails from other parts of the world, mostly from the United States, like from, oh, I'd like to take your seminar when you bring it to California?
Mm.
Or do you have any books or tapes I can buy here in Kansas? And so these various elements came together, and I thought, I bet I could publish an ebook and get it out to the world. And from that I got together with my sister, Catherine Goulet. We brainstormed ideas because it ended up being, uh, it was called the Fab Job Guide to Become a Motivational Speaker.
Wow.
Is because I've been teaching seminars for people who wanted to break into the speaking business. So that was,
But I also just like the idea that like you're willing to share your wisdom and give the tips because, that could be a competitive space. And so
oh,
to be able to say
definitely.
like, not necessarily this is a roadmap because everyone's going to have a different experience, but just the fact that like, let's leave the door open behind me, let's pull people up the ladder,
Yeah,
all those analogies, not everyone's willing
yeah.
to do that.
Well, we built a publishing business on it.
Hmm.
On the bottom shelf there,
But
those
yes,
are some of our
anybody
books
who's watching
for.
on YouTube, this is where the bonus features always come in. You should check this out on YouTube. There's always visuals.
Yeah, so we ended up hiring authors. I remember initially people took risks publishing with us because we weren't a
Mm.
major publishing house. And I remember advertising, we had like a $300 advance, but it wasn't really an advance. It was, you keep this no matter what happens.
Okay.
$300 US, really low, but then we offered a 25% royalty. And at least one of our authors ended up earning six figures from sales of his career advice.
Hmm.
And it actually ended up, for those people who were risk takers and came
Right.
along with us, it ended up being, because so many authors, you go to a traditional publishing house and it's like, okay, here's your 5,000, and then every book we sell, it's going to come out of that 5,000, and many never make any more than that $5,000 or
Mhm.
10,000 or whatever. I mean, unless you're Stephen King or
Right.
some huge, giant, already successful author. So it was awesome because we gave lots of authors a chance to get
Hmm.
published. The whole business evolved over time where as piracy became
Mm.
rampant on the internet, our books were about starting a career or a business. It was basically something fun and exciting. You could, in the case of the businesses, you can start at tomorrow, learn how to be an interior decorator or an event planner or a professional organizer.
Right.
The very first book of ours that our sales went to zero from massive online piracy around
Yes.
about 2005, 2006 was become a video game designer.
Oh, wow.
Because what we found was that and piracy made us pivot. We had to, where that particular business ended up was becoming a career college, which is still going strong. I've retired from my role there, but it's lovely to see it still going.
Yeah.
And we really appreciated people who were willing to share. Here's what I did to get started.
Yeah.
And we had our authors interview people. So I remember with our, book on starting an ice cream shop, we had, the person who started Yoga and Brews and Baskin Robbins and all these people who'd had success and were willing to share their advice. And it was amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because listening to you talk about and hearing you say specifically like 2005-ish for this time, like I think about it, I'm like, the fact that so much changed then and is what's changing now feels like it's still kind of mirroring what changed just in a slightly different way, right? Like I do feel like 2005, maybe even a little earlier, you really had to start marketing yourself as an author, like as you were saying, the big publishing houses, unless you're someone like Stephen King, you were talking about money, but I was thinking also like, well, they weren't really putting money behind them to market unless
Right.
they thought it was going to be a success because of a trend or a name or whatever. And then now, same thing, they're, looking at like who has what following on social media, but also now AI coming in, and it's a little bit
Exactly.
different than piracy, like in legal terms, obviously, but just the idea of it's scraping all of these other books and creating this like monster amalgam that it's then selling with some kind of fake version of the real author's name. I'm like,
Oh
how
yeah.
is it's crazy
So
to me.
I see it, it is, to me, it's what's happened recently to the graphic designers and photographers and filmmakers is coming for with
Mhm.
ChatGPT's Sora software, is that you've created this amazing thing, and now someone else can take what you've created and tweak it a bit and
Right,
maybe add a few things here and there in AI and create something new, which they never would have been able to create without yours in the first place.
right.
And we started getting like massive, not just the downloads. And one of my books I discovered was even on LinkedIn. One of the
Mm,
books was downloaded 54,000 times without us earning any royalties.
wow.
But we also had people who were, scanning the books. And there was a man I remember in Baltimore who had produced a series of audio tapes about becoming a motivational speaker. And someone who'd bought our book contacted our customer service and said, I've already have all this information.
Oh,
It turned out he had read my book and was telling all my stories about, it was surreal, but I completely identify with what's going on for all these other creators
yeah.
now, and having to pivot from having your work being used. One of the first things I did, The Atlantic has an article about what has been used by, I think it's Microsoft's Gemini,
Oh,
which
yeah.
which books have been
There's
used.
two now. I think because Google, it's Google Gemini, but it's
Oh,
Microsoft
right, I
Pilot.
might have mixed that up.
But
One
no,
of the
but I was
first,
saying that I don't know if it's the same publication, but I've saw both explored. Let's put it that way,
yes,
journalistically.
yeah,
Like they're looking
yeah.
into that.
Well, I searched my name
Oh, okay.
and on because they have a search box on the Atlantic article, and oh yeah, they were trained on one of my books. So yeah, I think it's a reality that us creators, uh, we can't fight it. It's like the tsunami's coming, and we just have to find ways to work around this.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
honestly, I do think some of this has been around for a long time because, like, you were just talking about the motivational speaker who was basically reading your book, and I heard a similar story about a baseball coach who was selling his like little league team motivational tapes, but it was just like him repeating something but this was, years ago when it was like harder to track down, like the
right,
original, harder for people to know that it's not his words of wisdom,
yeah,
whatever. And so like that idea of like that kind of scam has been around forever.
right,
Like just stealing somebody else's work as long as
yeah,
you can get away with it. It's just so much more prevalent now, which is scary. But I mean, I do want to turn this a little bit I want to go into the show that you're working on, but I want to go
yeah,
backwards for a second because when I was asking the question about like how the out of the box of this children's book might have influenced you, I was also thinking a little bit about the gift because the way
right,
that you set up the gift with who you have quote unquote competing for this money, it's artists of all, maybe not literally all, but like very many mediums,
right,
physical art, painting, you've got dancing, you've got a circus performer, you've got comedian, you've got musicians, like things that are hard to quantify against each other sometimes, like
right,
in that like
yeah,
Star Searchy kind of America's Got Talent way. And I'm curious if the idea for that was because you didn't want to just like make everybody the same on your show, or if it was also just the idea of, well, I want to showcase all of these talents, that how that kind of came about and what complications that might have even created when it's
sure.
hard to judge them against each other.
Great questions,
It's
and I'll tackle each of them. So, where it first came from was the show was basically created based on my life ultimately, because I had been supporting creatives
yeah.
in many different fields. It started with filmmakers. I'd moved to this new city. I was on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia at the time and didn't have a wide social circle. And I started, for some reason, I thought I'd love to be involved in the film industry. I went online to sites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter and just sort of poking around, finding out about people making films because I had, I was an older person. I didn't know anyone in the industry. Is there a way to get involved? And I don't recall the steps that led me there, but in 2017, I found initially 3 films that I thought,
Hmm.
oh, I can be involved with this
I
by,
was gonna say, if you have
and
money, you can always be involved. That's
well,
the one thing. I don't know what you were looking at in terms of
I had
investment,
no
but
idea.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
didn't realize this. And, of course, now creatives know if you go on the crowdfunding site, okay, donate $1 and we'll say, thanks. Donate $5, we'll send you a picture, or all the way down. And I got to, in this case, I think there were 3 associate producer titles that I could have, because producers, of course, are the people who make things happen. And the associate producers are sometimes the people who just have donated. And the first 3 experiences I had were incredible. One ended up, it was a documentary based on a Star Trek series, and
Hmm.
I am a real classic nerd. I love the whole Star Trek world. I have a Star Trek uniform in my closet upstairs that I have actually worn. They had Star Trek night at the Symphony
Oh,
locally.
nice.
So, yeah, I'm a real nerd. And so I got to go to Paramount Studios for the screening, and it was a blast. And then another one, I got to go down to Los Angeles and be on set. And I discovered that people who've donated to the film, producers, are welcomed when I go to set. It was like I didn't have to worry about, oh, no one knows me. How am I going to make friends? Everyone was just
No,
nice and friendly,
yeah.
and yeah, and let's sit with us for lunch. And yeah, it was really nice. And I felt like I was part of a community,
Yeah.
which I was missing in this place that I had moved to, where I didn't yet have friendships established. The other one ended up being a film in the United Kingdom, which there's a lovely couple that created it who've gone on to do other things as well. Anyways, I was kind of from those 3. This is
Hmm.
something I want to do, and I ended up, because I'd find others,
Right.
and I get that little dopamine hit when I send the donation off, and more so when they would send a thank you.
Yeah, more so because it sounds like you had good luck in your choosing as well. Whether that is just having like a good quote unquote picker in general, but like that these things actually got finished, got shown.
Yeah.
They didn't just disappear into the ether.
Oh, well, I ended up deciding that I was going to support 100
Whoa.
indie films in 5 years. So that was my goal.
Okay.
Okay. So if you go to my IMDb page, there's like at most 70. So
Oh, I see.
I actually discovered that um, when I give a donation to a filmmaker, I have to warn them there's a 50-50 chance that they may have to enter the witness protection program and never be seen or heard from again. So it was like, yeah, some of them vanished, and others only vanished until they wanted their next project funded.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, there was one fellow in the United Kingdom who went back and forth and back and forth with this guy and said, oh, we're not going to make the film, but we have had all these expenses. Okay, keep it, keep it. Now we're going to make the film. And then, oh, now I've sold the film to someone else to make. And so I can't give any of the credits I was going to give. It was like, there's, but
I will
also
say
what
some of that sounds a little shady,
it
but
was shady.
you seem happy about your experience overall, so I'm not going to harp on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It was overall a really good experience. One of the things though I learned also was I had like 100 different indie filmmakers I wanted
Yeah.
to support. Well, from the perspective of each of the filmmakers I'd supported, they were like, oh, here's our funder for our next film. And I've learned most filmmakers don't have only one film in them. They
Right.
have multiple, and they also have friends who have films. And so what started to happen was I was getting literally hundreds of requests. The year I realized there's hundreds of requests coming in was when I started realizing I need to do something else,
Mm.
because I'd moved also beyond filmmakers to, I thought, you know what, I want to support other creatives too. So here's a donation for a dance company. Here's this person here's a group of 3 guys in Toronto making a comic book that looks really cool. Here's, musicians,
Right.
ceramic makers, et cetera, et cetera. Even the odd YouTuber and writer. I
Yeah.
just found all these creatives, and I thought, this is great. I feel good about the donation, but it's getting I can't support 200, 300 people for the rest of my life.
Right. Although I will say, I mean, because on the show they call you the sugar mama. Now I
Right.
understand a little bit more fully why.
Yeah.
Because that is
Yeah.
a lot. The volume of that is beyond what I realized. I mean, because obviously I've researched you and I saw like your credits and I've seen some of the projects beyond the gift. But as you pointed out, like IMDb is not everything you've given to. So,
Right. Yeah. And we also on the show though, we have a little fun with it because I also have a massive sweet tooth. I won't tell you how much sugar
I mean,
is in
I'm the
it.
same way, so I get it.
So we actually each episode, it's an unscripted show. It's a reality competition genre, but we also do what Saturday Night Live does, which is even though it's live
Mhm.
for most of the show, they have skits every now and then
Mhm.
pre-recorded.
Mhm.
So we do one of those in every episode, and we have a cute one where someone explains to me what most people think a sugar mama is, and
Oh.
so it's cute and it's fun. I had a blast doing this show. Yeah.
So how did you I mean, just talking about the different types of people that are quote unquote
Right.
competing, like that to me feels like maybe one of the hardest parts of narrowing down the types of people, even before you get to the specific people. What what went into that? And
So
yeah, just
I will give the credit to
is
the
that all
people who
casting
deserve it.
or
It
okay.
was casting when we put the call out for the show. We ended up partnering with, so the first person I went to was my sister, Lolly DeYoung, who we call Dr. Lolly. She also appears on the show because she's got a PhD. She's a human development expert. She works as a mentor, a facilitator, helping the creatives make their best art. And so I went to her. She had worked on a television series years earlier that she had created locally, that was aired locally. And she found us a co-production company. It's called Simba Creative. It's Black owned. Sylvester Ndumbi, who has since created a show called The African Family, which is now sold worldwide. They've got it in 10 different countries already. And he and his team came aboard with making this happen in terms of our crew. So the casting team included Sylvester, Dan, who's also from Simba, Dan Gretton, who's a co-producer,
Mhm.
Lolly, our niece, there's definitely nepotism in the company. Our niece, Therese Goulet, same name, different spelling as me,
Mhm.
ran the casting. She's a young person. She's Gen Z and a musician herself. And we had this eclectic group for the casting process.
Yeah.
I wasn't involved with the casting though, because I wanted
Okay.
to meet them all fresh
That's
on the
so that's what
show.
I did want to talk about too, because
Yeah,
that is a big part of one of the early episodes of like they don't know who is going to be really running this show and
right.
it's a part of like you're going to there's a for spoiler alert everybody because I have seen a little bit of the show. There is an interesting kind of speed dating setup where they're going in and meeting different people who they think might be this benefactor sugar mama and then it's kind of a surprise for when it's revealed.
Right.
And I'm curious about that too, just in terms of like setting that up that way is a very unique take.
For season one, we just cast in our province of Alberta,
Okay.
Canada. So, but our city has, there's like we have literally millions of people living in this province, and we managed to get exactly. I know the number sounds funny because it's meaningful to some people. 420 people put in an application, not 421, not 400. It's exactly 420. Put in applications, and out of those, the casting team initially we didn't have guidelines for what type of creative because my support for creatives had spanned really a wide range, and I recall one of the applicants apparently was someone who's a competitive food eater. So they go to
Oh,
fairs and they
wow.
eat popcorn, not popcorn, they eat the hot dogs or whatever it is. So we had all sorts of different types of creative people applying. So that was part of what our casting team had to figure out was
Mhm.
how do we kind of narrow this down in a way that makes sense? And it's what we had to do was have challenges planned in advance of,
Okay.
okay, here's what the topic is. Is this going to be an individual one? Are we going to have groups? And how it shook out was we ended up with a group of 4 stage performers, 4 musicians, and 4 visual artists. And there's, as you mentioned, there's a huge range within that. So we have had, like in musicians, we've had a rapper, we've had a concert pianist, we've had a gay country singer, we've had, I'm talking 2 seasons now.
Hmm.
We have in visual arts, we've had a fashion designer, we've had a tattoo artist, we've had a makeup artist, as well as the painters and stage performers all over the place, dancer, comedians, etc. And we thought, okay, we're going to have a really good thing that we can do here with not just the individual challenges, but we can have stage performers competing against musicians, competing against visual artists in the particular, whatever the challenges that I would give them.
Right.
And then we mixed it up. And so we'd have like 1 stage performer, 1 musician, 1 visual artist working together. And
Hmm.
the performance art that they created was incredible. So how do you evaluate against?
Yeah.
Ah, so that's
And not even just how do you evaluate it, but I mean, how much did they know going into the show about who they might be competing against and how they would be judged, right? Because like so
right.
many of these shows, there, first competition is always like show us your heart, like pick your favorite song that
Right.
we can clear. Like American Idol, it's always like they come with this thing that they've had like close to them for so long as their audition.
Right.
I imagine it's very similar on a show like this, but then week to week,
Right.
they're responding to you. Do they know ahead of time?
All they knew ahead of time was what the first challenge was,
Okay.
which was you are going to show the Sugar Mama, because the show at the time was called the Sugar Mama. We're just finishing up rebranding it as the Gift, and the reason for that is to sell it in Canada. We
Oh,
already have a US streamer, which is, as soon as it's rebranded, we're on the air. But our Canadian,
they didn't
weirdly,
like the
because
title.
they didn't like the title. And it's funny, you don't think of Canadian, or I don't think of Canadians as being averse to risk, because hey, Heated Rivalry came from Canada.
I was just saying, I was thinking that. And also,
Yeah.
I don't want to make this more complicated for you, but there was another show called The Gifts, and I don't know if it was
Oh yeah,
popular in Canada, so I don't know if it's going to be a problem. It was a Turkish show.
oh
So
no, no,
I don't know if they're going to be like, "Oh
there's
no,
actually,
too
I think,
close."
4 different series called The Gift, similar to,
Oh,
there's about, from, and they're all from different countries, but
okay.
ours is the only reality
That's
series.
true. That
And
is true.
I mean, if for some reason they didn't like it, we call it The Gift, with starring the Sugar Mama, or featuring the Sugar Mama, or the Sugar Mama's Gift, or something like that. So we've had a good
Okay,
response
as
from
long
the
as they've
broadcasters.
already dealt with
Yeah.
that part, because I was like, no one's going to confuse the shows if they
No,
are
no, no,
paying
no.
attention to what it's about.
No, we're
But
not
if
we're not
they're
going to
concerned
confuse it.
about branding, the Sugar Mama is at least you.
Yeah, there are, though, lots of places that have. I mean, we've trademarked it for
Oh, good.
television, but there, like, most towns have a bakery, or someone who is like a Sugar
Oh,
Mama bakery, or there's a Sugar Mama.
yeah.
I know our co-producer ended up, his new partner owns a sugaring company, like for beautician supplies, or
Oh,
something along those lines.
wow.
Well, she's also known as the Sugar Mama. So there are lots of Sugar Mamas out there as well. So that was fortunately one of the things that we discovered was titles, unless you're competing in directly. And it's the same with books too. I used to teach a publishing book, like
Yeah.
get book published seminar, and the example I would use was The Big Picture. And at the time, there were like half a dozen books called The Big Picture. So we just have to stand out, I
True.
guess. But actually, I wanted to mention something about books,
Sure.
which I think is a really interesting statistic, because we've talked about, things being competitive. About 40 years ago, I used to teach a seminar on getting a book published. And at the time, I used to say to people, it's really, really competitive. Each year, 50,000 new books are published. And people were like, oh, yeah, that's a lot of books. So since then, the explosion of publishing, self-publishing,
Yeah.
print on demand, ebooks, Amazon Kindle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are over 50,000 books being published every single week. And now the AI will be like, I don't even want to think about
Yeah,
it.
but you know that so it's similar with TV shows too. When we
Right.
used to
Yeah.
have set amount of
Like
networks
two
doing a
channels when I was a
specific
child.
pilot, but even 10 years ago before all the streamers we talk about all the time when there used to be a traditional pilot season. Now NBC's trying to bring that back a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's very similar in the sense of look at this explosion. How do you make your waves? And I do think that especially in the reality space, and I will speak for myself as somebody who watches a lot of it, I do think what is maybe the most unique about this show are the things that we've been discussing. The fact that it is these specific types of people who are competing against each other who you don't really get to see represented. I mean, you see
Yeah.
comedians and musicians a lot. You don't really get to see like painters on shows like this,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But also the fact that you're being brought into the production as a figure in the show. And
Yeah.
it's like a benchmark for them to get to know who you are and then to like watch them do their thing. And I will say,
Yeah.
again, I will speak spoiler alert for people who haven't seen the show yet. Like I've seen a little bit of it. The joy on your face when you are watching these people perform for you, but ultimately kind of fight for their spot on the show, which could be a very tense and sometimes desperate place for a contestant. You're giving them so much as a judge. I feel like on a lot of these shows, it's the opposite. It's like they're
Right.
not showing the emotion or they're not giving the feedback because they don't want to tip their hand or
Right.
they just feel like it's better TV to be dramatic. And I'm curious if you intentionally went the other way or if that's just how you were naturally reacting when you watched.
I reacted completely naturally. And in fact, one of the things when the show was being created, I remember one of the things I dislike about some reality series
Mhm.
is the feeling of it being scripted.
Oh yeah.
And, I think most of us we've been watching a show where, you can almost predict what's going to come in the next 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I wanted something that would surprise people and as well as delighting them. And that's how I felt when I was there, is that I'm being surprised by what I'm seeing. And we aren't going to do things like tell people ahead of time what they're going to be doing. We are not going to do multiple takes
Mhm.
because even ones that are supposed to be documentary type series, one I'm familiar with, they're supposed to be recording them as they're
Mhm.
actually living. It's not a
Yeah.
competition, is what I'm thinking of. And yet they have producers come in and say, no, we'd like you to say this and we'd like you to do that. We actually had that happen once
Mhm.
on season one of initially the Sugar Mama, where Dr. Lully and I had given a challenge to the creatives. They had just left the room. Here's what it was the very first challenge we were giving them after the Who You Are challenge.
Okay.
And they'd left, we're done, filming's done, except then someone from the mission control comes in from the production team and says, okay, I'm going to need you to do that again. Now, this time I want more energy or whatever.
Oh,
And I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, we filmed it a second time. And then afterwards, I said, unfortunately, I was on a hot mic at the time because there were a number of F bombs that
that's
unfortunately
okay. I mean, you're in
everyone
charge
heard.
here.
F and F and F. And we are not doing that again. And then I had a meeting. I the next all crew meeting because we'd have daily meetings, like
Right.
the safety meetings and all that. I said to the crew, we are never doing any additional takes unless unless it's a technical failure or something, which there
Right.
wasn't on season one. Um, no second takes. What
Yeah.
we have is what we use. And then I told the cast that as well. I told them we're not. It felt so wrong.
Yeah.
It felt icky, and it was like, so when people see me there, I am an extremely emotional person. You might have seen from how I respond to some of those performances. That's
Real.
me.
No, that's good. I mean, that's also, I mean, it didn't feel like you were faking it, but
No,
sometimes when I see it, I'm like also thinking in the back of my head, well, it definitely makes better TV if she gets emotional. And maybe she went into this saying, I want to make sure that I'm overly vocal, just because it'll be different. So it's nice hearing you be like, no, I was just in the
no,
moment, really moved.
that's me. The idea
Yeah.
was we're going to be the real me. And if
Yeah.
I didn't feel something, then I would probably just sit there.
Yeah. Which then they
Except
would all know
no,
who's in
I'm not.
trouble
Yeah.
because it's very obvious.
Yeah, I have like no poker face. I wouldn't even try to play poker because
Right.
people can read everything. Oh, yay, look at my hand.
Well,
I'm
it's
winning.
it's also interesting hearing you talk about, no second takes because that's sort of a lot of times what I feel like the interview footage is for on reality TV. Like when you don't get the thing you need in the moment of the
Right.
docu style, then you pull your people aside and you ask them a pointed question. How did
Exactly.
you approach the how much interview stuff you wanted in the show versus like the actual seeing them do their craft to then get to that performance?
That was thanks to the team at Simba Creative, who, we had people who were experienced working on a number of productions here. For example, the Last of Us TV series was
Yeah.
filmed up in
Hmm.
Alberta.
Hmm.
So our crew was phenomenal. And we took over this property. It's called Azaridge. It's this gorgeous estate, like they do corporate retreats there. And we had it. We had a team on set at any given time of over 100 people. And they, knew ahead of time that, okay, we have to set these times aside to do what I guess in the industry are called talking heads. We call
Yes,
them
yes.
check-ins.
Oh, that's nicer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's thanks to Dr. Lawley. She's amazing. So
Yeah.
I was really fortunate to get to work with her on this. Yeah, especially because she's more level-headed than I am too. I think.
Okay. I mean,
Am
I
I
don't know.
saying
I
too
think
much?
it makes for
TMI.
interesting TV. No, it makes for interesting TV when you don't have level-headed people. What reality show has level-headed people?
But here's the thing too, is that even in casting, you hear about the reality series have types that they
Oh yeah,
cast
of
for.
course.
So yeah, here's the angry person, here's the drunk,
But
here's the
that's
flirt.
shows that are more personality based
But
because you guys are doing
it was
something a little
all
bit
talent.
different. Yeah.
But and one of the questions though that was asked during the initial planning stage was, well, how are you going to have interesting interactions? And I said, they're living together for 10 days.
Yeah.
12 humans in a living together, there will be humans are going to human.
Something.
Like there'll be something like, and they were like a really entertaining, interesting group. So yeah.
But I will say, maybe it's the nature of the way you designed the show. The first season, from what I've seen so far, they did feel very supportive of each other, which
Oh
was
yeah.
nice on a show like this, where like they seem aware of like what I do is not what you do. It's very different, and so like I can't really get mad if you do something better than me because we can't, our things are not identical or equal
Right.
in
Yeah.
the arena. I'm curious if from the first season there was any art type that you felt like, oh, it's kind of too hard in this environment to judge at all. And maybe for future seasons, we need to like reconsider how we integrate
Right.
that particular one. And I will just speak for myself. Like when I saw there was a tattoo artist, I was like,
Right.
that to me, who's he going to tattoo? You know what I mean? Like, because it's not just his skill or her skill. I don't want to
Right.
spoil who this person is, but it to me, it is. You then need to have models that are, maybe willing to
Right.
do full body sleeves and things like that. That seems like an extra hurdle. I don't know if you guys felt that way, and I
So
don't
what?
want to pigeonhole you into talking about that specifically, but that just made me think of the question on a broader level of like some of
Yeah,
these things
sure.
feel almost too complicated.
So we did think of that, like what are they going to need? And so for the very first challenge where we see the tattoo, the 2 weeks ahead of time, he had to start. His
Right.
model is actually seen in one of the episodes. his model ended up having to go to the airport to get a dog or something,
Hmm.
so wasn't able to be there to be filmed. But that's why
Oh, sure.
we show the recording of that. And then we provided, we had a crew member volunteer for another live tattoo. So yeah, so
That's
that will
cool.
be in a later
Okay.
episode. You'll see. So yeah, so we made sure that they could do what, and they could bring a lot
Yeah,
of
I think that
stuff
was
to set with
also
them.
thinking, I was also thinking, I think of like the time it takes
Oh,
a
absolutely.
musician to compose a piece versus the time it takes a comedian to write a set versus the time it takes, a circus performer. Like to me, I don't know how long it takes any of these people to do anything because I don't have those skills.
Yeah.
But to be able to say, we know how much time collectively you'll all be able to do this in feels like a big undertaking. Is that something that changed episode to episode because you realized some people needed more time?
There are some things that happened. In fact, there's at least one curveball where there's a
Mm,
challenge thrown in at the last minute. We found that everyone did amazing. They rose to the occasion. And when we were casting for season two, there was no concern about any of the creatives. Like, oh my goodness, because here's an interesting thing is we found is that someone who probably the person on the series by the end of it you'll watch who has says, oh, it was so easy for everyone else and not for me,
mm,
was actually a not what you would expect, because it was someone who actually um, uh, already has a repertoire of all
mm.
sorts of things. So it wasn't like the tattoo artist or anyone who would actually expect it would be hard for.
I mean,
So a
honestly, I
lot of
would
it had to
expect
do
it would
with
be hard
their
for
mindset.
everybody.
Oh yes, totally, totally, yeah,
I mean, because it just all looks complicated because you have to be creative quickly, and that's hard. And you're sharing a space, and that's also hard. And then
yeah,
as you already previewed, sometimes they're working kind of together, and that
yeah,
seems also very complicated. I will say though, I this is maybe a spoiler, but I think it'll also help people maybe get also excited for the show. There is a musician who is in a wheelchair and he builds a piece of equipment that helps him play the piano because he can no longer use the pedal. And I
yeah,
was so floored. Like, I know he didn't build it in the time it took for that first challenge. I knew that it was something
no,
that he had come into the show with,
yeah,
but I was so floored by like that extra piece because that's like, yes, he's an artist and he's creative, but he's also kind of a scientist. He built this technical thing.
yeah,
And whether or not he's happy with how it works for him going forward in the show, I don't know. But like that is alone worth a patent. You know what I mean? Like
uh-huh,
all of these people are so talented that I was like, this is
I know.
crazy.
So how the question I get asked, which I already heard from you, is
Well,
how do you choose?
I wasn't asking you if he wins. I will say
No, no,
that.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
I wouldn't give that spoiler, but
Right.
the question you did ask,
Yeah.
which I'll take a stab at here, is how do you choose? Like, it's beyond apples and oranges. We're talking like bowling balls and airliners, like they're completely different. And I think a way to think about it is that me as the sugar mama, I represent funders for creatives generally. I think where people don't make decisions, people like me in any case, based on here's how many points you have for this, and here's how many points you have for that, and here's like I've done this checklist of you. People like me are my role would be similar to I guess a bachelorette in terms of maybe the audience would say, well,
Mm,
I like this particular person or I like that particular person. The bachelorette goes, well, I like this is the one I
right.
like.
Yeah.
So I, as a prospective funder, I look for what surprises and delights me, and I look to be moved. So and this is true of like when I was funding films or any kind of creative work, is make me laugh, make me cry, give me goosebumps. I want to feel something. And we have a quote now at the start. So you might have seen an early version
I
of the
did. I
sugar
definitely
plum.
saw an early version. Yeah.
Yeah, so now that it's the gift, we have a season opener that we begin with now, and it begins with a quote from Louis Riel, who's
Mm,
I'm a Métis person, and it's an indigenous group in Canada, and the quote begins, "My people will sleep for 100 years, but when they awake, it's the artists who will give them their spirit back."
mm,
And so the idea here is that we're looking for someone who moves my spirit, and I think that the lesson for people out in the world who are creating things is when you're looking for your own funders and your own supporters, is there's a certain percentage of people, I would guess at least half, who need to be moved by what you're doing in one way or another. They need to feel something. You like there's some who, of course, we know this from grant applications, who are like, well, it just, we're going to add up the total of, what is your financial statements, and you fill out these
mm.
forms and all the, jumping through the hoops. I'm not that kind of funder. And many, many other people who support the arts
Right.
don't do that. And that's, so we represent the people who don't make you jump through hoops to
Right.
get support.
Right.
Although, of course, on the show, you're jumping through,
Well, yeah, but you're
you
just
you
being
have fun hoops. It's
I was gonna say you're just being
create
asked to
beautiful
do what you
things.
do, to be
Yeah,
creative. Yeah, it is very much, it feels to me very much like the slightly older school separation of creator and business, right? Like they're
right.
just being asked to come on the show and to create, and they're not worrying about like walking in, and this is traditional like writer Hollywood speak, but like they're not being asked to walk into a studio and pitch, and the person who they're
Right.
pitching to is thinking marketing and numbers and budgets and
Like Shark
sort
Tank.
of thing. Right. I mean, well, that is bigger than Hollywood because they're like selling products
Yeah,
globally, like physical products too. So, but it's a good example too of just like, yeah, they're looking at bottom lines and production costs, and like it's slightly different, which I think is a great reminder of like that's kind of the point. Like artists don't get into this because they want to be a millionaire. It would be nice if they're a millionaire, but most of them are doing this because like they have something in them that they have to say or do or get out, and they'd be doing it even if they weren't making any money at all. So asking them to put the dollar amount of worth on it is unfair. And I feel like a lot of times that's what some of these other shows do. Um,
yeah,
Even unintentionally, because everybody knows when you walk into audition for a lot of these singing shows, you can look at the stats. You can look at who has performed well and succeeded with record sales. You can look at who has performed well but didn't succeed because someone too similar to them won last year. Like there's a whole lot of things in that
yeah,
algorithm that will ruin your day if you think about it too hard.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
well, my hope is that we're going to create a world where people are valued for what they make, what they create, as well as themselves,
Hmm.
and that we don't. I really, really, really dislike the traditional grant system because so many creatives' hours are wasted filling out these stupid forms and these budgets and things. And it feels like people have to jump through so many hoops when only
Yeah.
a very, very small number will actually make it. And my hope would be that the hoops will get a lot smaller. And if you have no chance of getting a particular grant, then you can move on and do something else and not
Hmm.
invest. Because I know so many creatives who it's so frustrating for them. One of the questions people would typically ask me is, where do I find more people like you? So
Yes. I was
I'm
going to say,
sorry,
and
we
I
don't have
think
a club.
after this, I do want to ask you, and as well, when we wrap up, I always ask people where we can find the things that we talked about, and I want you to be able to tell us where you want people to go to find out news for the announcement of,
Thanks.
the premiere date and broadcaster. But I'm afraid that if you give out your personal Instagram, people are just going to
Oh,
come to you and be like, "Can you give me money?"
oh no, because here's the thing is now all of my funding is going to the show and through the
Of
show,
course, yeah, but
except
people will
for
still try.
organizations. Yeah, oh, and they still do. I've had people reach out on every single social media outlet. And my Facebook now says
Mm.
personal page, no pitches
Mm.
here, please. No pitches, bitches. No, it doesn't have the bitches part. But it we're going to create a series if all goes the way I anticipate, potentially as early as 2027. We would be casting in the United States. So, someone seeking funding for a creative field, Sugar Mama's not going to give it to you at this point because I already got hundreds of people pitching me. I have to. I had to for my own peace of mind.
Yeah.
Now, my funding for creative works goes through the series and some organizations as well I support, but for individuals I can't do that anymore, or it couldn't go public if I did. Like,
Makes sense.
yeah, that just I would be well, you'd have to lock me up somewhere. I think if I did that, that would make no sense for me to, yeah.
All right, so tell us where you do want people to go to find out
Oh,
information on the show once it's ready to be announced, because I don't have that exclusive to announce today. So you tell everybody
yeah.
where you want them to go.
I would recommend that people come to the website for the series because we will be sending out casting notices once we do start casting, like in a Canadian series, like our season 3, US series, United Kingdom. We are hopeful. The African family went to 10 countries. My goal is to be like RuPaul and
Mm.
have the drag race everywhere and have the gift everywhere so that wherever your viewers and listeners are, Danielle, that they can, yeah, hey, when this is in my country, this is something that I could apply for. So it's thegifttv.com is the domain, and on our contact page we're again in the process of rebranding. There might be some Sugar Mama mentions on there still, but people can fill it out, and then be once we start casting, we'll send out notices and let you know where you can put in your application. And there's lots of gifts given on the series, and in addition to the $100,000, there's other surprises along the way. So once people get a chance to see it, I think they'll be quite excited.
Excellent. All right. And then, of course, I also want to talk about Mr. Pine's Purple House, because if you guys want to check out that book, it's available wherever you get books, but it was first published in 1965. So I will say this, if you get your books at a local store, they might not just have it on the shelf. You might have to ask them to order it for you, but it is readily available online if you get your books online. So thank you all for listening and or watching. Thank you to Tag for coming on Made Possible by Pop Culture. This was a really fun episode for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And if you did, of course, like, comment, subscribe, follow on social media, tell your friends. Lots more to come in this season of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. So stay tuned.